On paper, drawing expressions should be easy. We all know that smile means happy, frown means sad, etc., etc. But in reality, expressions are far more complex than you may initially think. A single line can completely change an expression, making capturing certain emotions difficult. I often find that my expressions lack that oomph that makes the character feel alive. Like what I draw doesn't portray the right amount of emotion I want to put into it. Things like that can be extremely frustrating, but over time I've gotten a better grasp on how to draw expressions that are, well, expressive, and match the emotions I want to capture. This video will start with the basic building blocks for drawing expressions that more beginner artists may need to know, and then dive into more specific tips and how to use those building blocks to your advantage. Before I get started, I do want to note that I won't be diving too deep into anatomy since I don't consider myself the best person to cover it. I also don't consider my art to be the most expressive thing in the world, certainly not as exaggerated as people with more cartoony styles, so I'm not the master of expressions, but I know enough to share tips that have helped me drastically improve. And I will be providing some resources from more experienced people that you can use. With that preamble out of the way, let's just jump into the tips. The building blocks of expressions are the general facial expressions used to achieve a certain emotion. For example, when you're happy, you smile, but not only that, your eyebrows will usually go up and resemble an arch. Perhaps you have dimples that may show, or creases near the ends of your mouth or the corner of your eyes. There's also the saying that if you're genuinely smiling, your eyes will squint. That's where the phrase smiling with your eyes comes from, and can be a key feature to add when drawing a smile. I drew over some real life references to highlight the features better, and these are a good way to indicate that someone is happy. Of course, there are various levels of intensity to happiness which can be reflected in the expression. In this case, how wide a person's smile is can indicate that. But I'll be teaching more tips about how to draw the exact expression you'd like a bit later. For now, we just need to focus on the basic traits. For sadness, obviously you frown. That's the first thing you likely think about. You might also think about your eyebrows, which may be pulled up and together, giving an upside down arch appearance. Your face might droop, you might have tears in your eyes. All these things are things we read as sadness in an expression. Next would be anger. There are a lot of signs of anger, number one being furrowed eyebrows. When this happens, the brows lower, so oftentimes bringing the eyebrows closer down to the eyes can indicate a more intense, angry expression, as well as exaggerating the curve of the eyebrows. The nose might wrinkle or flare when angry, eyes could squint or glare, and you might frown or open your mouth to yell. Anime likes to stylize the angry expression vein with the red symbol you might have seen before, representing veins that might appear on a person in intense moments of anger. As for the last emotion, surprise is quite simple. Usually we associate surprise with the eyes going wide and the eyebrows going up. The mouth may open and resemble an O shape as well. To many, everything I said might sound obvious, but it's a good thing to know before going into expressions. There's a reason why emojis are so widely used and universal. They're able to capture expressions in such a simple and effective way that we can easily read emotion from them through very simple lines. And they do it by incorporating these notable features for each emotion into them. By the placement of eyebrows or the shape of the eyes, you can tell what emotion is being shown, which is why it's good to know these building blocks of what registers as each emotion before considering intensity or drawing more nuanced expressions. For example, by changing the eyebrows on a surprised expression, you can make it read more as fear, or by changing the mouth to a smile on a sad expression, it becomes more bittersweet. Mixing and matching these different building blocks can lead to so many variations of emotion and can also help when upping the intensity of an expression as well. Like I mentioned earlier, if you want to change an expression from annoyed to furious, you can exaggerate the eyebrows. You can make them bare their teeth, or perhaps make their face red to up the intensity of that anger. But I still haven't revealed my best tool when it comes to expressions, which will be the first real art tip. Creases, my best friend when it comes to art. If you're unsure what I mean, creases are the temporary wrinkles that form on your face when expressing emotions, like dimples that show up when you smile. Look at any picture of someone expressing emotion and you can likely spot it. Seems simple, but a lot of people don't utilize creases to their full extent. That's because in the case of stylized art, we usually don't draw all the facial creases all the time. Adding too many can make a character look old, and a lot of the time it's unnecessary. Personally, I just find them useful when drawing emotions, specifically making them feel more lively or intense. I think a lot of people, especially with anime roots, feel like adding too many creases will make their characters look ugly or have the problem of making them look too old. But when have intense emotions ever been pretty? That's why, if you haven't already, try messing around with adding creases to add intensity to an emotion. But where do you add creases? It's pretty easy to tell. Try smiling. Act it out. That's another tip I learned, acting out the expressions to see how it feels and communicate that in your art. I mean, there's already an artist meme of how you end up making the expression you're trying to draw. And that's because it's helpful. When you smile, you can feel the corners of your mouth being pulled up, which is where the creases form. And when you smile with your eyes, you can feel yourself squinting, causing creases at the edges of your eyes known as crow's feet. And you might feel the skin below your eye bulge. If you're familiar with K-beauty, it's also known as aegyeosal in Korean. But with that being said, usually I like drawing lines under my character's eyes and by their mouths to give off the impression that they're really smiling, showing off that physical aspect to emotion that makes it feel more real and lively. Similarly, try looking angry. When you furrow your brows, you can feel the skin pinch in the middle of your eyebrows. Your nose might also get scrunched up, leading to a lot of creases in that general area. I love drawing these creases when exaggerating angry expressions, as without it the whole expression often falls flat for me. Even simpler or more stylized styles will utilize creases in this way. I've been rewatching Attack on Titan, and I think they do expressions really well. They really aren't afraid to make their expressions look ugly and incorporate all kinds of creases to show how intense the emotion is. You can see that in how the faces lack a lot of detail normally, but in these moments of intense emotion, the style becomes a lot more detailed to better capture that, while still staying consistent stylistically. With that being said, even if you have a simpler style, you can try looking at media with art that is similar to yours or that you like and see how they might tackle intense emotions. But expressions are more than just creases, so we also must consider other aspects of anatomy when drawing the face. How the face changes when making expressions is something you should highly consider, not just for realism, but to make the emotion feel a lot more real. As an example, if you want to draw someone pouting, you might want to draw their cheeks puffing out. In this case, you would need to change the shape of the face to show this. The face has muscle and fat like any other part of the body, and these muscles form the different expressions I talked about earlier. Muscle and fat also have mass, so you want that to reflect in the face shape. Another good example of this in motion is how your face extends when you open your mouth. Put your hand on your cheeks and open your mouth, and you can feel the stretch of that muscle. When you open your mouth, your face will also appear longer and more of an oval shape due to the shifting of the fat pad on your cheek. Just feeling the difference when opening and closing your mouth can help you understand this. So when you try to draw expressions, consider how it may impact the shape of the face. If your character's face is the same length when opening and closing their mouth, it may look weird and unnatural, so I try and take that into account when drawing. Usually I draw the head with a simple shape at first. So if I'm drawing a character puffing their cheeks out, I will usually draw that into the base shape before even starting on the expression. Doing this just helps me map things out and get a feel of the pose down. Honestly, thinking of every aspect of the face as a 3D object with mass will help your expressions improve by a mile. Knowing the anatomy of the skull and the muscle on top of it can also really help your understanding of why the face looks a certain way when drawing expressions and make things feel real. In the description, I linked a really good video I liked on drawing mouths by David Finch. I like how he draws the expression over the human skull so you can better visualize the anatomy behind the face, and he also shows you how to draw mouths in a way that considers mass and thinking of it as a 3D form. I also linked a website that takes you to a small snippet of the book Anatomy of Facial Expression, the same people behind Anatomy for Sculptors, which I highly recommend. This book shows you the anatomy behind facial expressions, showing you the fat and muscle underneath so you can really understand why creases may form in certain areas and the mechanics behind expressions. I consider this information really helpful, so I'd highly recommend checking it out if you want to understand facial anatomy. But when it comes to expression, the face isn't the full story. Just changing the face isn't enough to make your expressions feel lively. A lot of people can get stuck on just worrying about the face, but completely neglect the body. Body language is a huge part of expression, so you should really take the time to consider it. For example, your shoulders might tense up, or your fists might clench when you're angry, or you may go to cover your eyes when you're sad. If you have an intense expression on the face but the body stays still, it'll feel like there's a form of disconnect there that makes things feel inauthentic. Looking at references or just pulling from everyday life can help you draft up poses that will match the intensity of your expressions. Another thing to consider is how your characters express emotions in a unique way if you're doing character art. People don't cry or laugh in the same way, so why would your characters? Consider your character's personality when making expressions. I keep my more shy characters subdued in their expressions, whereas my outgoing characters will be more expressive and large in their emotions. Would your character yell when mad, or will they just grit their teeth and bear it? Perhaps they try to mask their anger or sadness with a smile. When they cry, do they want others to see it? Do they ugly cry? Thinking these things out not only adds a lot of personality to your characters, but also communicates their personality to outsiders and keeps your expressions from feeling too samey. If you worry about same face syndrome or repetitive art, this can be a good counter to that. So not only should you focus on the face when drawing expressions, but consider the body and the personality of the character you are depicting. This will add a lot of liveliness to your art and makes expression work a lot more fun in my opinion. So what about actually drawing expressions? I'll be sharing some tips I use when it comes to the act of drawing expressions and how you can practice them in a fun and engaging way. One of the biggest things that helped me when tackling expressions is drawing them very emoji-like first. I'm not sure why, but drawing the expression in a super simplified way really helped me figure out how I could capture the emotions first before focusing on the anatomy and technical side of things. The biggest thing I struggle with when drawing expressions is being able to make it feel lively and real. So like how people do rough stickmen to map out a difficult pose, I just like drawing an oversimplified version of the expression first to get an idea of what I really want to do. I usually like mapping the eyes out in a bit more detail as well, and I find it particularly helpful to draw them as one shape, even if they won't look like that in the final. If you're drawing in an anime style, you might be used to drawing the top and bottom of the eyes separately, which I also enjoy doing, but I find it more helpful to draw the eye initially as one continuous shape so I can get a better idea of what the overall shape will look like. When you're drawing one eye squinting or wide eyes, this comes in handy, so if you draw your eyes in two separate pieces, it might be worth considering drawing them as a simple oval just to get a better idea of how it may change due to the expression. Honestly, it makes things a lot easier to just think of things like the eyes, mouth, and eyebrows as simple shapes. Drawing the mouth as an odd-shaped rectangle or a triangle and thinking of the eyebrows as an arch or a wave has been a lot easier for me to make appealing expressions than just thinking of them as body parts, if that makes sense. It allows me to loosen up when drawing, and focusing on shapes that look appealing make the art look much better and usually lend to more expression in the face. Of course, you need to consider mass when doing this, but focusing on shapes has really helped my art in general. But before you even get to the eyes or the mouth, my professor recommended drawing the nose first. While the nose can certainly shift depending on if you're scrunching it up or whatnot, it's usually the part of the face that changes the least when making different expressions. It's also in the center of your face, so it serves as a good anchor and reference point. So I find it helpful to draw the nose first, or at least draw it as a guide so I can see where to place the eyes. Then usually the eyebrows and then the mouth. If you're drawing an extreme expression, you may feel at a loss of where to begin if every part of the face is super expressive, so focusing on the nose first can give you a good starting point and make it easier to draw the rest of the face. And if the expression doesn't capture the right emotion, try drawing it again. In my pose video, I mentioned how drawing a pose once to get the anatomy right and a second time to get the flow right is helpful for making more expressive and fluid poses. And the same can be said for drawing expressions. Sometimes you need to loosen up and get a hold on that anatomy before drawing it again and figuring out how to exaggerate certain things to get that desired effect. You can also use things like line of action when drawing expressions. A lot of times I'll use it as the brow line to figure out expressions that are more uneven or asymmetrical. A lot of the things that can be applied to the body can also be applied to the face. But as for the best ways to practice expressions, there's a lot of charts you can find online that can help you practice. I always go back to this chart by Jay Wobblegong on DeviantArt that I have linked in the description. I like how it gives you different scenarios to cover besides the basic sad or happy descriptors, which makes you think harder about how you would draw an expression for that specific scenario. I've done it 3 to 4 times so far, and each time I feel like I've improved. Drawing funny audios you find online is similar to this, and I find it helpful to be able to just listen to a voice clip and try and draw what expression that person might be making just from their voice alone. I mentioned this in a previous video as a good way to practice posing and post your characters online, and it's also something I use to greatly improve my expressions. A lot of viral audio clips involve someone getting really mad, so you're sure to be able to draw intense expressions if you go this route. And as for references, I look on Pinterest and Line of Action for expression references. I also like looking at expression sheets from professionals, especially the Disney ones I find really helpful, and I like how stylized they are. I know Spider-Verse also has really good expression sheets I've studied, so looking online for concept art from your favorite show or game or movie and seeing if they have expression sheets can also be really helpful. But to close this video out, I want to compare this expression chart I did in February of 2023 to this one I did in January of 2024. They both use the same character, so it's a little bit easier to see the improvement there. You can see that I implemented a lot of these art tips, including improving his body language and drawing his faces at different angles to better match the expression and make them feel more unique than the old ones. I also think the shapes I used for his mouths is way more appealing in the new one. You can tell I got better with shapes, and thus the head shape and mouth shapes are far more appealing and read as more expressive because of it. And I also add more creases and draw them in better places. You can really see how the angry and shocked expressions are improved by them. I feel like this is a good way to wrap up all the points I made in this video and show them in action. Obviously, I've improved and done another one since then, but I think it shows how a little practice can go a long way. I may have forgotten something, so feel free to leave your own tips or resources in the comments below. I'm certainly no expert when it comes to expressions, but I think I've come a far way from where I started, which was having all my characters basically just stare at the screen with maybe a smile. Now I find a lot of fun and joy in making extreme and silly expressions, so I wanted to share that love with others in hopes that they can find fun in drawing expressions too. And sorry for the delay in videos, life has been a bit hectic, but I'm hoping to try and get in the groove of things again, although no promises there. When Tomodachi Life Living the Dream comes out, you will not hear from me. But if you have any ideas for videos I should do, let me know. The next one will likely cover some more design tips I haven't been able to fit into my other videos, and I may possibly make one on using Blender for environment building and concept art. But Blender is a beast, so we will see. But that's really all I have for you, so thanks for watching, and bye!